Hello, everybody. My name is Lee Burdett Williams, and welcome to the third of our four-part series for parents of college-bound autistic students. I'm the executive director of the College Autism Network, which is one of the two hosts of this series. CAN is an organization that's kind of a membership association that supports professionals who support autistic college students heading into college, getting through college, heading out of college. Um, and let me tell you a little bit about the impetus for this series, and then I'll allow my colleagues to do some introductions as well. The impetus for this series came about from many conversations and meetings with the professionals who work in or oversee autism support programs on campus and who know the value of well-informed parents when it comes to making important decisions about college. As a bit of context, some colleges and universities, about 200 of them, have programs, degree granting, matriculating student programs, academic, social, residential, that are specifically for autistic and similarly neurodivergent students. And we call these ASPs, or Autism Support Programs. Many more colleges, because there are about 4,000 in the US, provide these supports not through a specific program, not through an ASP, but as part of the services that they offer through their Access or Disability Services Office. And so when we talk with our colleagues in this field, the directors of ASPs and others who support autistic students, questions and concerns about career support on campus are always, in their opinion, on the top of mind for parents. It's a really big return on investment question. And so we've gathered some campus professionals who are people that we know are particularly tuned in to career support efforts in their programs. And they're going to offer you their insights about how a college or a university provides support related to a student's career planning. Let me turn this over to my colleague and co-host, Matt Gunter.
Thanks, Lee, and hi, everybody. My name is Matt Gunter, and I am the father of a neurodivergent student, autistic student named Peter, and he is a rising sophomore at the University of Arkansas with the support of the ASP program down there. I'm happy to report he had a fantastic freshman year, made some friends, did great academically. He's studying data science. He wanted to go to a bigger school with football and basketball and baseball, and he got his money's worth in that regards as well. So I'm happy to say, we were stressed out like many families are, I think, and he really exceeded our expectations, and we're very, very proud of Peter. Um, I, as part of the research that we did as a family, I started a small, humble YouTube channel called Inclusive Academia. I've had a number of the folks on on my channel to highlight their programs and to talk about these types of topics. And I have tremendous respect for what these folks do. I can say that Peter would not be able to attend a university as large as the University of Arkansas without the assistance of the ASP and the great work that people like this do. Particularly interested in this topic tonight, as all parents know, I think you kind of take things one day at a time. Now that he is a rising sophomore, we're beginning to think about internships and career after college. So I'm really excited to participate with this today.
Thanks, Matt. Now I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll start off. Matt and I have a number of questions for them. And we encourage you to ask any questions you have using the Q&A box on your screen. If you want something clarified, you don't have to wait till the end. Just drop that question in there and we'll incorporate it into the discussion. So let me start on my screen in the upper left. I've got Ryan. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your program?
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Lee and Matt, for the invitation to join tonight. My name is Ryan Palm. I'm from Mercyhurst University, which is located in Erie, Pennsylvania, the northwest part of Pennsylvania, right on beautiful Lake Erie. At Mercyhurst University, we have a program called the Brad McGarry Center for Neurodiversity. And that center has a few different components to it, most prominently a program called the Autism Initiative at Mercyhurst, AIM. You'll hear me use the acronym AIM quite often this evening. That's our primary support program. And we are soon to be starting our 17th year. Our program was founded in 2008, so we're one of the old ones on the block, and really appreciate the history and the tradition that program leaves with us. And we've continued to grow and expand the various outreach efforts that we have for neurodivergent students who are, seeking the transition to college. We have had a summer program called Create that actually is underway right now this week. We've also added a second summer program that is a 1-week program aimed for some younger students. So think your rising sophomores and juniors in high school. We also offer some dual enrollment opportunities specifically for neurodivergent students. And we've launched a new career-focused initiative called Neuro Launch that we'll probably talk about at some point this evening. That's really trying to get our students some hands-on experience. So we've built upon the success that we have in kind of the old guard of the AIM program and trying to help meet students and families where they're at in terms of their transition into the college space. So I look forward to sharing more details about those programs with you all tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ryan. And yeah, it's always an honor to have the McGarry Center and AIM as part of our work because it is so well regarded, as is RIT in the work of Kendra Evans. Kendra, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your program?
Sure, I'd love to. So thanks, Lee, and thanks for this team to be here. Like Ryan, I'm part of the OG network. Our program started in 2008 under Dr. Lori Ackles. I am happy to have taken the helm a couple of years ago. We have a number of different programs with a bunch of different acronyms. So similar to Ryan, I'll say that the two main components of our program is the transition from high school to college. And that's the Spectrum Support Program, or SSP. And then we have the Neurodiverse Hiring Initiative, or NHI. And those are the two acronyms that I'll use this evening. SSP was started in 2008. NHI, which is our career focus, was started officially in 2018. And it started with a career ready boot camp that lasted for 2 weeks and brought students to campus for kind of a team building, experiential learning, focusing on those soft skills that obviously our students need, all students need in order to get that first job. Things that we offer, we do one-to-one and group coaching. We have a huge experiential learning component to our program. We have our first ever neurodivergent student-led organization, the NDSA, that was approved by student government for the first time this March. We've expanded to include civic identity and a bunch of volunteer and other opportunities in that way. And of course, we have a number of social meetups, our lunch bunch that students come and hang out. We're starting study groups. We have a weekly Friday meetup. We do that in the dorms as well. And from our small 2-week program for Career Ready Bootcamp, we've now moved forward to launch Career Ready Part 2, where we focus all on interviewing skills and traveling to employers so that our students can get interviewed by actual hiring managers. And I'm excited that this year we're also expanding for a Career Ready Bootcamp Part 3. So we serve between 120 and 130 students in our group and one-to-one coaching model. The hiring initiative, or NHI, is meant to serve all 24% of our 17,000 undergrads at RIT. And we do that by implementing UDL and capacity building for our career services office and the professors. And so with that, I'll stop until we get to questions. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kendra. Karen, I've got you next on my screen.
And once I can find my mouse and where it is, I can start. Hello, my name is Karen Cranes Edison, and I'm a licensed independent social worker who is the Associate Director of ACE. We launched it as Autism College Experience, but we also found that many of our students didn't want to have that label out there. So we took away the Autism College Experience, and now we're just ACE, which means to do something well, or to be at the top of your game. I'm at a small school here in Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State University. We have this, moderate-sized athletic program. And much for the same reason that Matt's son wanted to be at that larger school. Many of our students feel the same way. Being able to be involved in athletics as a spectator, or within a large group of student organizations. That's really important to them. Combination of reasons. Sometimes it's just they feel better that they're in that bigger school where they're not that kid that might have come from the resource room, or that is always in a special service. But in the same way, I think there's for at least those in Ohio, being a Buckeye is super important. Lots of our students end up their legacy, right? So their parents have been here, their grandparents have been here, and it's important for them to carry on that family tradition. But in the same way, we launched back in 2016, looking at programs like Mercyhurst and like RIT, because they forged the way. They made this foundation for the rest of us to build on. So we've learned that our strength lies in staying small versus having larger numbers. So even though I'm envious of Kendra and Ryan, I'm happy with the small numbers that we serve, because we try to do a little bit more work with just a small number of employers within the Columbus area. So ours is more of a regional focus, more so than that, more national focus. But we offer many of the same services, making sure students understand the difference in communication from when they were a younger teen now to an older teen and a young adult. And then we generalize what they're learning, how they're learning to be a successful college student. We generalize that as far as how that will bring them to success in the workplace, because we know that when a student graduates, they may have a diploma in one hand, but the job offer is not guaranteed in the other. So we want to make sure that they're set up for that success, and that transition to employment. Pass it on to the next folks.
Great. Thanks, Karen. And last up among our panelists is from beautiful Westchester, Pennsylvania, Sherry Fishbaugh.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Matt, for having us. And as Karen said, Ryan and Kendra, Mercyhurst and RIT were definitely the models that we were looking at too, and could not thank Brad and Lori enough for their guidance as we were starting our programs, because we too started in 2016. Our program here called DCAP. It stands for Dub C Autism Program, and you just heard I'm from Westchester. That Dub is short for like W of West and C for Chester. The students named our program, and calling it the Dub C is really cool. So you're going to hear me just call it DCAP though. And that's the name of our program, which we started with 4 students back in 2016. And this semester right now, we have 120 coming for fall of 2025. So super exciting in that, really being able to support our students with that social connection, the independent skills, self-advocacy. And when I talk about self-advocacy, oftentimes we're talking not just about to faculty or to staff, but to their peers, to their parents, to others of, hey, I want to become more independent. And how do I get more into that employment piece? And I want to have that job, but oh gosh, I'm scared. And so I've never had a job before. Where do I start? And that's what we are here to really help build that confidence up for our students, as well as be able to give them that experience as we go on. So we really started hitting the career piece about 2.5 years actually in, because a lot of the first thing our students wanted to focus on was actually the social connection piece. And then from there, as they built more confidence, the employment piece came in, and really working with our career development center, making sure that they are getting those same resources as every other student on this campus is getting. We have workshops weekly on Fridays with our Career Development Center, where they're working right on all of those skills, whether it be, what am I going to do? Right, to here's your resume. We're all shaking our heads because I know that we all do those similar things. And we love our people who actually have that as their expertise, and not somebody who has maybe applied for only a few jobs in their life. So in that, another big hat that I wear is a co-founder of the Neurodiversity Employment Network here in the Philadelphia area, where we have nearly 1,000 employers and higher ed folks that are in, and some job seekers in our network, building up, like, how do we empower this area to, one, not only hire people who are neurodivergent. How do you do that successfully? How do you onboard? How do you support them? And how can we empower those job seekers who become your employers in the future? So super exciting stuff. A lot comes with partnership, and I sure I will answer many of those other questions as we come up. But same as Ryan, you're talking about your summer programs. Ours are in the heat of it. So if you hear me or if you see me look around, it's probably because right now I have about 20 students downstairs ending their week. They have 1 day left. So they are hyping it up down there. So I'm always like, oh, what's happening? But yeah, we run 3 different types of college readiness retreats here for up and rising sophomores, juniors, juniors, seniors, and then those who graduated. So they run anywhere from 3 days up to a 2-week period. So exciting stuff. And I look forward to telling you more about what we're doing.
Thanks, Sherry.
You're
And
welcome.
so I hope it's obvious that we have found ourselves 4 truly perfect panelists to be in this conversation tonight. I should mention too, if you see Brittany Jackson on your screen, she is my colleague here in the College Autism Network who is doing the tech back of the house there. So thank you, Brittany, as always. And a reminder that the question box is there for any questions that you have about this topic or really anything else. I mean, we can talk about anything else. If you put a question in the box, please limit any personally identifying information you might be able to share about your students, because this is being recorded and we make this webinar available along with the others on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to ask Matt to just start us off with a question.
Sure. So, I mean, clearly it's a bit of a challenging job market, I think, for all graduates coming out right now, unfortunately, and, be they neurotypical or neurodivergent. But I was wondering if you could maybe expound a little on some of the additional challenges and hurdles that neurodivergent students you see encounter that they need to kind of overcome or address, beyond the challenges of any graduate from a university in terms of finding that right first job.
I'll jump in and go first if everybody's okay with that. So I'll throw out 2 caveats that I think probably are representative of our programs. Number one is that anytime we talk about a student, there's probably another student in our program who's the polar opposite. And, our students come in many different shapes and sizes, and it's really hard to characterize them in general in a very good way. And then the second is, I think a lot of folks outside of our programs have this preconceived notion that students who are neurodivergent or in a support program like ours are very different than their peers across the campus. And they're not. They face so many of the same challenges. And so I think a lot of what I might suggest would apply to a neurotypical student as well. But when you ask that question, Matt, the 2 things that come to mind immediately for me is, one, some of our students have a heightened sense of anxiety about the fact that they're coming to this transition. They've been in often a very supported high school environment. They're in a often very supported, college environment if they're in a program like ours and the colleagues here tonight. And they see this next step as sort of jumping off that cliff, and it can be intimidating and scary. And so we'll have some students in our programs that refuse to talk about anything career oriented until they walk across that stage at graduation. Like, no, we're not talking. I don't care if I don't have a resume. I don't want to look at a job description, nothing. And we're like, well, you're kind of missing the boat on some of that and the supports we can provide. But, so I think you'll see a little bit more of that perhaps in the neurodivergent population than their neurotypical peers. And then related to that, the other thing that comes to my mind is the sense of urgency. We'll have students that they're just putzing along. Yeah, maybe I'll apply for a job or 2, and I'll probably get one of those 2 jobs. Like they're gonna right away latch on to that first job they apply for. I'll tell you one of my favorite stories from this semester. We had a guest speaker, a good graphic designer from a great Fortune 500 company in our town, lined up to meet with one of our students. I told that student, I said, great news. I have a designer. He can meet you, Tuesday at 2:00. And that student came back to me and said, oh, that's when I go to the gym, so I can't make it, right? He was going to prioritize the gym time over meeting with a prospective hiring person, right? So sometimes we have to, be a little more direct as to like why we are trying to make these opportunities available and the urgency that that falls behind them that I think maybe requires a little more attention than some of their neurotypical peers. So those are the two things that come to mind for me.
Did the student meet with the designer?
He did. It took a little bit of coaxing, and it was a phenomenal conversation. He was super glad he did it. But like like he truly was like, nope, that's when I go to the gym, and I can't make it. Like, no, you're gonna go to the gym later. Come on, right? Like, let's talk about this. Good times.
Yeah. Karen, I saw you unmute.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
so I think our students love their structure and their routine, right? I think one of the bigger challenges that we see here is, especially for our students involved in STEM, they are spending so much time. Some of our students they process information differently, right? And it might take them a little longer to go through their notes or to review, a recording of the class, so that they're picking up all of the pieces of all the information they need to be successful. And when it comes to thinking about how am I going to work on a resume, it does, much like Brian said, it gets put to the background because they've got to pass that class. They've got to get that 4.0 or 3.87, right? That achievement is not focused on the future. And I think, again, that's part of working with neurodivergent students. Future is very vague. It's very abstract, where, what's happening right here and right now, I've got to pass that class. I've got to go to the gym. I'm not going to work next week, so it may not be, top of mind for them. Whereas for us as practitioners, it's top of mind for us. Our program isn't judged by how many graduates we have working. We do track it. I think we find it's really important. But we also know what's important is making sure that the students understand what a good fit is for a job, and that maybe their childhood dream isn't quite the right fit for them. So again, sometimes it's difficult in, again, sharing with them what transferable skills are so that they can look at something that might be a more appropriate position for them. And again, some of my colleagues will talk about this, I'm sure, because we've got a very small internship program. It's harder for our folks to find internships because internships with larger companies are very, very competitive. And if you've got someone whose communication style is different, especially if a company is using an AI program that is looking for eye contact or is looking for, a smooth, speech patterns, it's going to be tougher for our folks because that's just not part of their makeup in many cases. I would say 75% of my students would not fit the description of the strong handshake and a good eye contact. They're brilliant and they can do amazing work.
Thanks, Karen. Kendra?
Sure. I'll just build on what both Ryan and Karen had said, is that yes, academics have to come first. And so that's why we start actually second semester of first year talking about things and getting them through their civic identity and coming up with different opportunities to put it front of mind and to treat the interview and job search process like you would treat a quiz or a homework assignment or a test. Like, to switch that mindset really before it takes hold has been super successful. That concept of how competitive the market is and how internships are being cut from many employers across the country is very real, and we're talking about it with career services for our students. Again, this is a broad stroke answer, but they struggle with the socially nuanced process of the current interview system. And so not only are they prioritizing academics instead of juggling these things at once, but they get rejected more often because of communication differences. And I'll say, speaking from my student population that I've dealt with anecdotally, they take the rejection even harder. I think everybody on this call can remember a time we've been rejected from a job and how that hurt. It's amplified for many of my students, and it's harder for them to get back on that proverbial horse. And I'll also say that my students intentionally limit where they're going to go in order to be near their support network. So many of them want to stay close to me and my team, or they want to stay close to their parents, which is why it's so wonderful that we're doing this for parents right now, because one of the statistics, right, is that over 50% of all job placements come from a warm handshake or building your network. And so as we get to like the number one thing we can do, parents, is open up our network, and how do we go from there? I like to use the saying with my program that I see our team as like rocket boosters, right? We're the ones that get them a little bit further, but we kind of fall away. Parents are the ones who stay. You got them into college. You're going to get them that first job. And so we're just so grateful that you're here.
That's wonderful. And I want to hit that parent question. What have you seen? How can parents help or hinder this process? What have you seen that works when it comes to parent involvement, and what gets in the way? Sherry?
Sure. Thank you. I think what helps is it's a supportive parent, right? Of being able to listen to what the student wants to do, being able to find help them find where to find the jobs that are of their interest. And the reason why I'm saying it specifically like that is because it's important that the student is the one making the decision on the job, and it's not the parent making the decision of, I want you to move into this. I'm really glad you went for that business degree because I wanted you to get that business degree because I think you'd have more opportunities. Meanwhile, the student's like, but I really just love working at Petco. I want to stay there forever, and it's like, great, you know what? I love working at Petco too. I love the dogs and the cats, but what can you do from a business standpoint, and having them look beyond just that beginner job too, right? Of really being able to help them, not push their ideas. So when I think about hindrance, it's making them kind of fit into a mold that you would like them to pursue or that you think they should pursue. Because what I've seen is a lot of resistance to that and a lot of unhappiness. So, but I do want to come back to, as Kendra said earlier, like, you are the ones, like, parents are the ones that are a support network. They have that network to be able to say, hey, let us help you get in that door, make that introduction. And then you can take it from there. Because once they see your skills, hopefully, right? Like, you see your skills, you're going to take it from there. But they need that help getting to the door to know exactly. And that's, based on the last question too, is that's really where that push comes from. And I'm glad you said that statistic out there, Kendra, of 50%, right? That whole networking piece, which is extremely difficult for our students. So they need you for that. But again, just making sure it's based on what they would like to do.
Thanks, Sherry. Anybody else? Kendra, you want to respond to that question
I'd love
about parents?
Everything that Sherry said, and yes to the network, open that up. My two extras would be, I'm the mom of 3 teenagers, all of whom are neurodivergent. My youngest also identifies as autistic within that umbrella, but 2 of them are going off to college, and I've always loved buying them their clothes and dressing them up and just making sure that they have what they need in terms of professional clothing, not to push it upon them, as Sherry was saying again, but that's an area where parents can make sure they go off to college with that suit because they're going to need it. So that's just an easy, low bar way to stay involved. And then, even though we don't want you to be the CEO, because we have been, as I call us varsity parents, those that have been parenting through the K-12 system and the IEPs and the 504s, I still think of myself as the CEO, even though I know I'm not. And so I use it as my acronym for the 3 steps, whether you're talking about just the transition from high school to college or college to career. You get to ask 3 questions, or actually take 3 steps, and that's it. The first for CEO is confirm. Gosh, honey, that sounds really hard, difficult, frustrating. Like, just confirm, validate whatever that feeling is. The second is empower. How are you handling that? Just listen, just empower and listen. And the last one is the offer. How can I help you? Would you like me to, if they don't give you something right away? That's it. 3 questions. Don't lead, just ask and wait. You can still be the CEO as long as you just keep it in your mind that that's what you're doing with your little acronym. So I'll stop there.
Excellent, Kendra.
And Lee,
Karen?
I've got a slightly different twist on this. So in listening to everybody, and again, everyone's got a phenomenal internship program that they're working with their employers. One of the ways our internships came about was because of students. Their families came in, or someone who was considering the program for their son or daughter said, you know what, I've got opportunities at my company, right? So that networking for us actually started very internally, right? Now, those students aren't working at their parents' companies, right? They're big enough companies, they would never know that they were within those systems. But I think it's that piece of where our parents know what the ins and outs of the places they work, right? They know if it is more neuro-friendly. They will know, or they want it to be more neuro-friendly because of their, because of their child. So again, if parents have that opportunity to be able to share those other opportunities, because again, our career services, and I know we'll touch about this later, it's a little different than when career services were working with most folks that are our family's ages, right? There's, especially at a larger institution like ours, you would think that there would be more of those one-on-one contacts where the career services from engineering can say, hey, let me introduce you to this person. And at least from what we're seeing here in Columbus, that's not the case. We reach out on a much broader scale, or we're using Handshake, or we're using Indeed. That personalized piece isn't there. So if there is a way for that personalized piece to come through our programs, for students, I think that's a phenomenal way. With the one organization that we've been working with, it's only been since the year of COVID, 2020, we've had 43 interns, and out of those 43 interns, 10 have been hired. That's a 25% rate. So again, and this was just from someone coming to our program information session to find out if the school was a right fit for their son. He went to Arkansas, but again, now we still have this great opportunity to work with this company. So.
That's great. Excellent.
Great advice.
Let's expand on that a little if we could. So maybe for our audience, share how the process typically works on your campus. And I know a lot of you work directly with career services on your campus as well, providing training and connections and that sort of thing. So if you could just kind of take folks through how does the career search and placement process work on your campus, in particular for the students in your program, that'd be appreciated.
I'll be happy to get started. We do work with our career development center. They're understaffed, under resourced. So we partner with them, but we by no means expect that, hey, they're gonna, we can send a student there and 6 months later they'll come back with a job or an internship. We know that's not realistic. So we work really closely trying to, talk with our students about all the basics, right? What do you want to do? Where do you want to live? All the things we've, sort of already hinted at tonight. And then we really start to identify resources that we think would be really helpful for our students in the job search. There are now so many great job boards that are specific for neurodivergent candidates. There are companies that we know are very, neurodivergent friendly hiring practices. So we try to give this bank of resources as a place to start. And then we also talk with our students about, figuring out what would be your dream organization or two, and keep an eye on those job boards, right? You shouldn't rule out XYZ company just because they're not on this neurodivergent friendly, job site. That's not fair to exclude them as well. So it's trying to have that kind of balanced approach in terms of how you're looking at different roles, thinking about industries you may want to get into and where are there other opportunities. Sherry, you gave a great example of Petco may not be the right role for you, but maybe there's other organizations within the animal space, looking at nonprofit organizations where you might be able to work in human resources at an animal shelter as a full-time job, right? So talking through those pathways and how we can try and help our students mirror their passions with some career opportunities, and offering lots of suggestions on, neurodivergent friendly, starting options as well, knowing that your first job is probably not the dream job. It's probably not your last job, but if it's a job and it gives you some meaningful skills that help you to the next thing, there's a lot of benefit from that.
I don't know many people that their first job is necessarily their dream job. So, Sherry?
Yeah, just to I'm going to mimic a lot what Ryan said, right? You work with your career development center, and you have all of these. I mean, all these places on Handshake. You have Indeed, right? Like you were talking about, Karen, and all of these places. But at the end of the day, it is hard. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's beautiful and everybody gets placements, and no. And it's being able to talk to our students about, we're looking, right? And Kendra, you said the second semester, we're already talking about it. We're trying to get students involved with that. One of the things that we have that goes on not only here at at DCAP and at Westchester, but also within Neurodiversity Employment Network, we brought it into that, is something we call the Connect and Learn Meetup. And that is actually not a job fair at all. It is about having students practice the skills with employers and a lot of those talent acquisition officers that we have within our NEN network. That are coming in, so they can look over resumes, they can look at their portfolios, they get comfortable with that. And the way we set it up is actually they are first and second years go as observers if they don't have their portfolios right and a good resume up and ready. They get to go as an observer to watch the third and fourth years present to the employers, and they get to listen to the different feedback, and they get to just start to think about that process. And that, again, they get 4 years of that. In doing that, a lot of them come into, doing it out into the community ones as well. But again, I'm not here to say you're going to get a job. I'm not here to say like I can just give you a job. Whoever is there, we typically will have the listservs out of saying, hey, these are the jobs that are available. I'm sure that you're all like, we have wonderful job boards that come out and companies that are looking for neurodivergent talent that we tap into, right? Like Mentra and Integrate and Neurodiversity in the Workplace and all these wonderful places. But again, those are for 1 or 2 jobs. And we have, 50 people that are looking from your one program at that one time. And so in that, they have to apply to them. They have to be able to get through the interviewing process. And so it takes a lot of reassurance for that 1 or 2 people to get picked while the other ones are going through that defeat. But tapping into resources is so important. And a lot of times what I'm finding is trying to find places on our campus, like the library, IT services, our student union, what are places, orientation teams, what can we do to have them in their own network in a safety zone on their campus to start building up some of those skills and then moving out into the smaller businesses. And I will tell you, I have a lot more success with those smaller nonprofit or one like an entrepreneur, that started something than any big business any day. But the students still have to use their skills to get those jobs. But luckily, they are practicing them throughout those 4 years.
Great point, Sherry. On one level, work is work, right? And so getting comfortable with the idea of showing up when you're expected to show up, of having some responsibilities for which no one is going to step in and rescue you. You have deadlines, you have obligations, and that whether that's working at Petco or working in the student union or working in an internship at PNC Bank, those jobs all have that in common, right? The need to show up responsibly and take instruction. I wonder if you all might talk about some of the I know a number of you all partner with companies, businesses, employers that have a heart for neurodiversity, who have maybe even a formal neurodiversity hiring program. I wonder what some of the best practices that have really stood out for you from employers that you've observed, and how are they really beneficial to neurodivergent job candidates? I'd like to start that. Kendra?
I see.
Oh, Karen, go ahead, Karen.
All right. One of the things with our one company that has always impressed me is the fact that they make sure that students come in not only understanding who their supervisor is, but knowing that they have a mentor that they can reach out to. And again, for a lot of our students, that's difficult because they don't know how to reach out or why to reach out. But we had one of our students that came to us and said, my boss keeps asking me out for coffee. I don't like coffee. So then I had to sit and tell them, like, okay, this is networking. They want to learn more about you. They want to learn about your personal side, so that they can kind of help you along. And again, this is a company that I was able to say, so who's your mentor there? So they've got someone outside of the department who will mentor that student. They try to meet with them within their first week, take them out to lunch, take them out to coffee, and then we can tell them, no, you can have tea, it's okay. You don't just have to have coffee. But again, helping them with that nuanced side, right? Things that they might not feel they're comfortable asking their supervisor, they can ask the mentor. And in the same way, the supervisor can go to the mentor to say, hey, can you give me some hints or tips? Because although the company does a good job of that initial training with all their staff, anyone who's working with any of the interns coming in through their Autism at Work program, you don't know everything. And especially if it's your first year, your first intern, or even your second intern, there may still be things that, you know, you're unfamiliar with as a supervisor. So that mentorship program has been a huge piece. And I know others have utilized that as well. So
Thanks, Karen. What else? What are some of the best practices you've seen employers put in place? Kendra?
Yes, to what Karen said about employers that realize they don't know everything. You don't know what you don't know. So being open and available and asking questions is the number one thing that I think has been super helpful. Employers that give the questions in advance of the interview, that's a huge step. And gosh, how low bar is that? And most of what I will say is just having a good manager, right? Any one of us, what makes or breaks our work experience is the person that you directly report to. So it's the quality of your manager is really going to matter. And for our students, to what Karen said, right, it's about that direct line of communication for a manager that understands there's multiple ways to communicate. Not everybody is big personality like me. And thank goodness, because your workplace would suck, right? We need our introverts and our extroverts. And so managers that can understand that what I'm going to put in place is going to help everyone. This isn't charity work for neurodiversity. This is best practice as a manager. And that can go from sending the agendas in advance to saying up front, here's what makes me different. Here's why I'm going to be working from home one day a week, because I care for my aging parent, or I have a young child, or I have social anxiety. There could be any one of these reasons. And if you think about the accommodations, most of it is just universal design. And that is what I would like to preach, is that it's not expensive and it doesn't need a medical diagnosis that I go to HR for. It's just about being a good manager, because when every person feels seen and valued, they're going to be their best self. And that isn't whether you're neurodistinct or just neurotypical and loud. So, and those are the best practices that I've found, is just being open and a solid manager.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kendra. Matt?
Yeah, let's transition a little bit and talk about the dreaded interview. So, I don't know about you all, but I never loved job interviews, and dread the idea of ever having to do one again. So, what kind of advice would you have, particularly for your students, um, about preparing for the interview? I think a lot of parents and students have the question about, do I talk about my diagnosis and how I work best and how my mind works differently, perhaps, or don't I? So I think those are some of the questions that are on a lot of people's mind. I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
I'll jump in with just a couple quick things. The number one and most important thing in my book is practice, 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 practice. Like, it is awkward and challenging to talk about yourself to a stranger, for anybody. And it's remarkable to me to see how uncomfortable our students are when we have mock interviews. And if that's our staff that are running those interviews, or if it's folks from the community we bring in and kind of observe, it gets so much better as you practice. And I just can't stress enough how important that is. I think the more you can have that conversation around what are the skills that you bring to the role, if you feel comfortable identifying that your neurodivergent diagnosis leads to those skills, that's great to mention if you feel like it's appropriate. I think there's a lot of conversation in that space. And I've heard from hiring managers on both sides of that, right? That say, yes, you should disclose, no, you should not disclose, and everything in between, right? And I very much would love to hear the rest of the group's, thoughts on that. But I think being able to speak to what those strengths are, because they do bring such incredible strengths to the workplace, the more you can, quickly articulate what those are, and then give some experience. If you have any experience whatsoever, and that's, I think I'm really working with some of our students right now who are in the midst of an internship for me right now. Like, I'm giving you all these things that you're doing well. You need to be able to tell a prospective employer about that experience, because it does no good just to be on a piece of paper. They want to hear about it. And if you can't give 2 or 3 sentences for every bullet on your resume, then you're missing the mark. But again, it kind of comes back to practice in my experience.
Kendra?
Yeah, you have to practice. And we take practice to a whole different level in that what are you practicing for? Because I have found that even when I talk about it in that way, it's not precise enough. So we have a rubric that started out as the 3 C's and then is expanded to like 10 of them. And it's, are you concise? Are you complimentary? And it kind of goes through so that the students know what they're looking for in advance. I think everybody here probably knows the STAR method, but for parents, it's the idea that I'm talking about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So that's how I'm crafting my answer. And so our students will script the answers to the standard questions and practice, 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 and then get feedback on that rubric. So they can be like, oh, I had the example, but I wasn't concise enough. And I rambled on and on and on, and then I lost it. Part of that anxiety piece that Ryan brought up for our first question, like, why is this hard for our students? I take a really big bite out of that by saying your job, I don't need you to impress your interviewer. I need you to keep them comfortable. That is the one thing you're doing. And you do that by reading the room, by balancing volume, etc. And one big part of keeping people comfortable, that is where I talk about disclosure. Do I need to tell you I'm autistic? I don't. Do I need to acknowledge that I take a long time because I really like to have my thoughts lined up to give you an answer? I do. And I talk about if this is something that will make your interviewer go, huh, talk about it up front. If you need to have a fidget and explain that I have this because that's what helps my brain function at its best. You should always describe yourself as an asset. And I find that that's what my students struggle with the most. And what employer doesn't want to hear, oh gosh, Kendra knows that she needs to have this marble in her pocket in order to be able to keep on task. That shows that I'm self-aware and an advocate, and I'm going to perform for you. So we go through a lot of different ways to tell me you're autistic without telling me you're autistic. Just how are you describing yourself as an asset to bring your best self to the table? Because you're interviewing them too. That's the other piece of removing that anxiety. Do you want to work for this person? Because again, your boss makes or breaks your experience here. So if they're going to get fed up because you take more than 3 seconds to answer them, nah. And then we also go over tricks like, oh, repeat the question, like give them that scripted thing that's in their padfolio. And my last piece is that even if it seems obvious, it isn't always. So what to wear matters. It's not just putting on the suit, but how to wear the suit. I had an epidemic of men's lapels being turned up like a 1980s pop star. So giving the what to do and what not to do, and similar to like this situation for my virtual interview. We go back to the basics. You know what happens when you assume something, and I won't be inappropriate on our recording, but you can't assume that this is not obvious to everybody. So, thanks.
That's great, Kendra. I'm thinking back to every interview I've ever had, and if my goal was to make the interviewer comfortable rather than impress them, if I had known that, I might have had an entirely different career. Can we talk a little bit about accommodations? And so one of the big transitions from high school to college, right, is that the whole level and approach to accommodations changes, and students really have to get used to a whole new set of guidelines and rules and expectations and support. Now they have to do that again. So what is reasonable to ask for in that vein for an internship, a summer job, or a career starting job after college?
And before you answer that, can I add on to that? And should you talk about that before you have the job, or should you wait until after you have the job to have that discussion? So let me just tack that on to Lee's good question.
Sure.
All right, excellent. So Matt, I'm going to start with yours, and I typically recommend what Kendra said earlier about being able to talk about things that may make somebody else feel uncomfortable during an interview. You just kind of own it. You don't say that you're neurodivergent. You don't say and come right out that you're autistic. Those cues within that interview are also leading to the same thing of what my accommodations may be without saying I need accommodations, right? You already talked about that marble, or I need a little bit of time to process that. Let me think on that. Let me process it, come back to you. Those indicators that you're doing during your interview are going to be some of the same things that you're going to need in your job, most likely. So I typically recommend to my students to not say anything more about that until after you have the job. And then in that, when I think about the accommodations that, here at DCAP, my entire staff is neurodivergent. And in that, we have a lot of accommodations, but to us, it just seems normal, right? Like you might need a break. Who doesn't need a break? Go down and get a drink at the water fountain. Go walk around. I need some fresh air. I'm going to take this call. What am I going to do? I'm going to talk and take the call as I'm walking around the quad. That's okay. Ooh, can you clarify those instructions and break that down into specifically? Do you have an example of that? And you know what? I think about some other accommodations are there. I actually have accommodations for driving in and out of work. Like you might think it's just snow, but what happens when it rains? These thunderstorms that we have been getting, right, are atrocious. Like they're really, really bad. And they've been happening in the evening with flooding every single evening. And in that, like, no, I want you to leave earlier and I don't want you to think about it. So about how I'm going to leave, when the rain's going to start, is there going to be flooding? Is there going to be lightning? Am I going to be able to see? So you know what, on those days, like, yeah, there have been times where, well, I shouldn't say times, but I do have accommodations that are actually put in for my staff that say that they can leave earlier, right? If there's going to be a storm that's predicted. Now, when we talk about those accommodations and what to put into place, right? And a lot of times it's explicit instruction, some of those breaks, right? That come on, clear deadlines. I meet with my staff. I have a morning meeting that tells them what their tasks are. I check in with them in the evening and ask, hey, is there anything that you needed help with? So we know exactly what's going to happen the next day. Just those clear expectations for them. But I am going to share something else that one of an HR person shared with me who was neurodivergent. And I love this, and I've been using it. I actually used it in my dissertation instead of saying accommodations. And I used something where he said, sometimes we have to use neurotypical speak. And so instead of saying accommodations, maybe we need to change that to for my own health and well-being. These would be a way that would help with my health and well-being within the workplace. Being able to take breaks for like 10 minutes just to walk outside every couple hours, right? To take my phone calls outside on a walking break. So just sharing that bit because I have loved that for my health and well-being. So
Great language. Others on the accommodations question, what's reasonable? What have you seen work, Karen?
I think one of the things Kendra brought up earlier, right, that accommodations are simple. They're not expensive in most cases. I can think about, 5 years ago, did I see a lot of students walk around with headphones on? No. Do I see them walking around with noise canceling headphones on now on campus? Absolutely, right? And it's the norm, right? So how do we think about universal design? How do we think about what that benefit is? And again, what's the return on investment? Sometimes there's zero cost and the return on investment is extremely high because again, it helps with productivity. It helps with that wellness and well-being. So one of the things we talk with our students a lot about is if they had this accommodation in college, what does that look like in the workplace? So what does extended time look like? What does a note taker look like? And now there's so many tools that we can use that it's not like somebody has to sit next to you, a stenographer taking nobody even knows what a stenographer is, but nobody has to sit there and take notes for you because we have tools to do this, right? We all have our note takers when we're on our virtual meetings, and they come back with this great list of to-dos. So why can't that be used in the workplace, but normalize it up front? Like, what are your other employees using, right? So in other words, it's not an accommodation, it's just, what do your other folks use? But we want them to think about what helps them be successful in college, because they'll need that in the workplace.
Well, and imagine the benefits that all other employees derive from having colleagues who are familiar with some of these good executive function or support tools. So definitely a benefit there. As we head towards the top of the hour, I hope, I am certain that the advice and insights that our panelists have offered has been helpful. And I hope you feel, as parents, heartened by the work that's going on our campuses to help our students be really prepared for this big transition, but also knowing that there are a number of employers out there who have figured out that there are real benefits to having a neuro-inclusive work environment. And so we're seeing more and more students get opportunities every year because those employers are making it work, and then their competitors want to get in on it too. And so I know my panelist friends here get approached by employers often, looking to tap into this wellspring of talent. So I've got a few wrap-up things to say here. One is that, well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening and remind you that our fourth webinar, which is on the topic of transition programs, gap years, and other alternatives to the first year of college, or that year between college, high school and college, will take place on Thursday, August 7th at the same time. We have a small favor to ask. We're going to drop a link into the chat, and this is a survey. Matt and I are working on a sort of our next effort to survey parents of neurodivergent students to create some guidelines and suggestions to share with other parents who are trying to figure this out. And we value your input. And so if you are the parent of a neurodivergent student and can take just a few minutes to answer some questions, just go to that link and do that. And we really appreciate that. I encourage you to subscribe to Matt's YouTube channel, Inclusive Academia. Brittany can drop that link in there, and that's full of really amazing videos, recordings with people like our panelists here talking about their programs and their insights as well. I think you'll find that really useful. Matt also has College Ready, which is another link we'll get there. Matt, do you want to explain what College Ready is?
Yeah, I mean, I
checklist?
owe a lot of thanks to a number of the folks on this call. We did a survey last summer on the topic of college readiness for neurodivergent students, and a number of the folks on this call participated in that survey. We actually published those results. There's a free summary that's available on college-ready.com. And then we also turned it into a workbook that Lee is holding up right now. It's pretty brief. It has lots of, I think, quality discussion topics that you can have with your student, really to make sure that you and they are on the same page about college, and help to build a support plan, et cetera. So recommend that you check that out.
Great. And then, of course, the College Autism Network website has a whole lot of resources. Not surprisingly, you'll find those under the Resources tab. And there are resources for parents of college-bound students that I think you'll find really useful. We have a neurodiverse job board list there. It's a good place to just poke around and see what some employers are offering. And one website that I love to mention is also under our resources for rising students, rising college students, is called College for All. And College for All is a terrific website created by an autistic high school student who wanted to create a website that would really speak the language of her peers. And so we're really honored to host College for All, and we encourage you to send your students there. You can reach me by email if you have any questions. We'll be sending out the link to this recording probably tomorrow morning, I guess. So you'll have it for further viewing if you'd like. And yeah, I think that wraps us up. I want to again thank Ryan, Kendra, Karen, Sherry, Matt, and Brittany for making this series such a pleasure to do. Thank you for those of you who attended tonight, and we would look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at our final session.